Joe Biden has tapped Susan Rice to lead the White House Domestic Policy Council, an interesting choice.
With Rice's nomination to that post, it's looking like Joe Biden is just having former Obama staffers draw jobs for the coming administration out of a hat. That was the conclusion of Eric Levitz in a great piece. Biden's cabinet picks are getting weird. Democratic strategist Andrew Feldman and culture editor at The Federalist, Emily Jasinski, are back with us to discuss. Emily, first of all, just give kind of your overall sense. I thought that quote was amazing and completely accurate, especially with the Susan Rice pick for this domestic policy position, when obviously her background is primarily and overwhelmingly in foreign policy. Yet Dennis McDonough gets VA secretary, which also seems like a strange pick, and a lot of veterans groups are really upset about that. What do you make overall about this direction and Susan Rice in particular?
Yeah, I like the Levitz piece a lot because he's saying it's getting weird in that there are some names that have been thrown into the mix who actually, and have been selected by Biden, who actually are kind of more progressive than some of these other picks. And so it's like he's just sort of throwing people whose names he trusts into the mix here. But what's interesting is that it is this is the most predictable thing ever with Biden, in that like he's this old Washington, smoke-filled backroom type of guy who trusts people more than he cares about their ideology or their sway. He obviously does care about that. The Intercept leak proved that much and underscored that point very clearly. But it also is like, it's helpful to see the preview of the Biden administration in his picks right now, and that like these are just people that he knows and trusts. And Susan Rice has been like the Forrest Gump of terrible foreign policy decisions. And like the Obama administration was like a great example of what was just like another chapter in her wonderful book. And so I think this is just like classic, predictable Democratic establishment, and it really sucks for the country.
Yeah, I just don't. This is the thing, Andrew. I don't get it. I mean, even Obama's DPC director would probably be better than Obama's national security advisor at the DPC. And I understand. Look, I mean, I know most people don't think about this stuff, but like these positions matter. The Domestic Policy Council is basically the National Security Council, but for domestic policy. Like, they have to coordinate things. She doesn't know anything about domestic policy. She's never worked on it once in her life. What is Joe Biden doing?
Listen, Sagar, I knew I was going to fight you on this morning.
Okay.
I mean,
right.
I think the reality is that we cannot look at this in silos, because it's not silos. Foreign policy, domestic policy are intertwined completely. And the bigger thing here, Sagar and Crystal, is that she understands how to get things done across government, the largest levels, largest agencies in government, and coordinate across offices. And I think that's what's really unique here about Susan Rice. And the reality is, I think Emily kept on bringing this up. I think she said it about 3 or 4 times in her last answer. This is about trust. This is about who does the president-elect feel like he can trust every single day, know that is going to be there, having the back of the American people. And I think that we cannot, wrap our heads too much and get stuck on this idea that foreign policy, someone who's worked in foreign policy can't work in domestic policy. I think this is about someone who has worked at the highest levels of government and coordinated that successfully in the past. And that's what Joe Biden's looking to do here.
But it's not just Susan Rice. Like, okay, you trust Susan Rice, then put her in the field where she's an expert, right?
Yeah.
Like, do you trust her on domestic policy? I don't know. I have no idea what her
trust a lot of people. It doesn't put them in charge of important agencies.
I have no idea what her domestic policy views are. I don't think anyone really does, because that has not been her focus. But she's not the only one. I mean, people are really upset, for example, at Vilsack ending up at USDA again. I mean, in part because of what was a truly shameful incident with him pushing to fire Shirley Sherrod after she was smeared during the Obama administration. But even beyond that, look, when he was ag secretary under Obama, it was terrible for family farms who were crushed, who saw their income decline, who allowed a bunch of big mergers to go through that has been crushing for rural America. Meanwhile, on the other side, you had Marcia Fudge lobbying for that job, who has deep expertise in SNAP, which is a primary concern of that position. And instead of being put in the area where she has, again, the greatest expertise, she's just put at housing and urban development. Not that there's anything wrong with that post, but she actually told the press beforehand, I don't want that post. I want this one because this is the thing that I know the most about. So, like, what is going on here?
Yeah, it's. I want to kind of go back to the trust issue because I do think, like, to Crystal's point and to Andrew's point, this is something. It is a matter of trust, but it's also, I think, kind of indicative of the status quo that Biden ran on, and that he is going to be really focused on reinforcing as president. Right, like he is not trying to bring progressive voices who understand a lot about SNAP into that position. He's like just trying to have this like restoration of the status quo. He actually like gets at that explicitly sometimes when he speaks. And I think that's what this is indicative of. And it is a matter of trust. It's saying, I trust these people from Biden's perspective to be decent and to be honorable and to be the Washington establishment that we know and love. And that's what is really being restored. And I think these picks are indicative of that. And that's sort of how the trust thing factors into it.
And Andrew, let me give you another example. This isn't just about Susan Rice. Just wait a second. So Biden trusts Dennis McDonough, okay? Because he knew him in the White House. He puts him in charge of the Veterans Affairs agencies. Well, veterans groups are like, who the hell is this guy? I don't know him. He's never once, being in charge of the VA means running one of the largest healthcare agencies on earth for vets who are not very well taken care of. He's never once worked in this area before. What are you doing, Joe Biden? That's, I think, another good example of you can trust the guy, but these are important agencies with real responsibilities that you need to do here.
I wouldn't disagree with that, Sagar, but I would say is Dennis McDonough was one of the most scandal-free, drama-free chief of staffs of the White House in the history of that position. He was there for 4 years. There was never one complaint about Dennis McDonough. I mean, everyone loved him across the board.
I got some Republicans you got to meet, Andrew.
He knows how to manage large pieces of portfolio and governments. But I also think it's very important. He was a frequent when he was on the National Security Council, a frequent person traveling to Iraq and Afghanistan, talking to veterans. But here's what I will say. I do want to caution. The president-elect and his team for making this look too much like an Obama third term. I have some concerns about that. I do think that this needs to be Joe Biden's first term and not an Obama third term. Lester Holt asked him that as one of the first questions in his first interview as in person since being president-elect. And I think we have to, that is a great question to ask. And President-elect Biden needs to remember that this is about his presidency, not Obama's. And so I was surprised by some of these picks. But when I pull back the curtain, when I think about what President-elect Biden is trying to do, I do think he's trying to bring people in that know how to get government moving and on track for working families right away.
But I just don't understand why. Look, the promise of this campaign was, we're going to trust the scientists. We're going to put the experts in place. We're going to bring a level of competence back to government. We're going to root out some of the cronyism and corruption, Andrew, of the Trump years. And yet what this very much looks like is, it looks like paying off political chits. It looks like putting your buddies in charge and then having enough diversity there to avoid criticism that you didn't create the diverse cabinet that you were promised. I mean, these don't look like picks that are just based on, hey, who's the expert in this area? Let me get the best person in there. I mean, look at Pete got to go shopping for whatever position he wanted based on his political ambitions. The fact that they went along with that is gross.
Look, I'm pretty happy with some of the science picks you talk about, Crystal, and following the science. I think we're going to be in a lot better position than we are right now. I mean, look, considering that Fauci's going to be the chief medical advisor, you have Vivek Murphy coming back in. And I think the reality is that progressives need to realize that Becerra is one hell of a pick for HHS.
That is the one that I'm happy with, Andrew. You're right about that. All right, guys. Okay. Great having you both. Enjoy your weekend.
Thanks.
See you guys.
Yeah. Coming up on Rising, the now validated facts about Hunter Biden's business dealings in China reveal a media cover-up when that story actually surfaced. We're going to discuss more details when Rising continues.